Okay, so what is the Lewis structure of tetrachloroiodide? Okay, so first let's find the total number of valence electrons for this ion. So in the case of iodine, iodine has 7 valence electrons, and chlorine has 7 valence electrons as well. And we also have 4 chlorine ions, so we multiply this by 4. And then since this ion has a negative charge, an overall -1 charge, we're going to add an additional electron to our total valent electron count. So if we add these all up, we get a total of 36 valence electrons. So now let's draw our iodine as our central atom. And then I'm just going to draw single bonds to all of my chlorine atoms. And then from here, I'm just going to add all of the lone pairs on my chlorines. Okay, so now I just like to count out to see how many electrons I have so far. So each bond contains 2 bonding electrons, and each chlorine has 6 non-bonding electrons. So I only have a total of 32 electrons, so I just need to write down 4 more in order to get my total number of 36. So for the last 4, I'm just going to add them as lone pairs on my iodine. So now I have total of 36 electrons, and now I'm just going to calculate the formal charge of each of the ions. So I'll write the equation for formal charge up here. So formal charge is equal to the number of valence electrons minus the number of non-bonding electrons. So these are all the electrons that are in the form of the lone pairs. And then minus the number of bonding electrons divided by 2. Okay, so let's calculate the formal charge of one of the chlorine atoms first. So all of the chlorines are the same, so I only need to do this once. And the number of valence electrons for chlorine is 7. And then each of the chlorine atoms have 6 non-bonding electrons. And lastly, chlorine has a single bond, so each bond contains 2 bonding electrons, and then I just divide this by 2. So 7 minus 6 minus 1 is 0. So each of my chlorines are neutral. And then if I were to calculate the formal charge of my iodine, iodine has 7 valence electrons, and the number of non-bonding electrons is 4. And there are also 4 bonds to the iodine. So we have a total of 8 bonding electrons, and then we're just going to divide this by 2. So 7 minus 4 is -1. So now I know that my iodine is the atom that carries this negative charge. So now let's see what the junior tutor said. Tetrachloroiodide ion has a molar mass of 268.7 grams per mole And to draw the Lewis structure for this compound, the first thing we need to do is to determine the total number of valence electrons. So they got 36. So therefore, the tetrachloroiodide ion has a total of 36 valence electrons. Since iodine is the less electronegative element compared to chlorine, we put it as the central atom. By obeying the rule of the octet and by distributing the total number of valence electrons around the corresponding element, we will have the following Lewis structure of the compound tetrachloroiodide. Okay, so they got the same thing. And to check, we can count for the total number of valence electrons using the dots and bonds from the illustration above, and we will still have a value of 36. Okay, so this solution is correct. And then I'm just going to specify that iodine carries the formal charge of -1. Or iodine has the formal charge of -1. And chlorine atoms have a formal charge of 0. Just so that we can know where the -1 charge came from.